Le Guin, clearly a very keen observer of people, of human nature, its foibles.
You could never, in a million years, mistake this for AI writing.
It's built from the inside out, right?
Yes.
It feels
inhabited,
inhabited, you know?
If you remove gender from a society, what happens? Welcome to Science Fiction Book Club, a podcast for bookworms and stargazers. In every episode, we dive into the pages of our favorite science fiction novels to break down the big ideas, ask the nerdy questions, and maybe learn a little bit about ourselves along the way. My name's Abu, and as always, I'm joined by my, I was going to say chemering partner, but there's a lot of, that implies a lot of things that aren't
I'd
true.
be your chemering partner, Abu.
I'm joined by, I guess, my chemering partner, Obssa. And gosh, today we're diving into a book that I think we both have quickly fallen in love with.
Totally. I am so excited for this episode, Abu. This is a book that we have both neglected reading our entire lives, and finally, it's landed here for this episode.
Yes. But as always, before we dive into today's conversation and cover the chapters that we've assigned for today's episode, let's knock out a bit of housekeeping, starting with the spoiler warning. Folks, as the title indicates, we will be covering the first 7 chapters of The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. So make sure that you have read those chapters and completed the assigned reading before you continue listening today. But don't worry, we won't be spoiling the rest of the book. We'll be sticking to just those first 7 chapters today.
That's right. And as Abu said, we, of course, encourage you to read along with us, read those 7 chapters, and for the next episode, the ones after that, share your thoughts, email us at sci-fi-bookclubpod@loreparty.com, and also join our Patreon at patreon.com/sci-fi-bookclubpod. We post free reading guides, discussion questions, bonus clips, all the bloopers you could hope to find on that Patreon. And it's also where you can, of course, find our Discord, where we like to keep these nerdy sci-fi discussions going with fellow readers in our community.
That's right. And links to the Patreon, the link to join the Discord, all of that is down below in the show notes. So check those out once you're done listening today. Okay, housekeeping out of the way. Folks, if you've been listening to us for a while, then you know the drill for these book club episodes. We will start today's conversation by summarizing the assigned chapters. Then we'll share our first impressions, what we think of the book so far, what we think is going to happen, what are we enjoying, what are we confused about. We'll get into all of our thoughts and feelings. And then finally, in the back half of the episode, we'll dive deep in our sci-fi analysis. And as we like to do whenever we start a new book, we will be diving into the literary history of this book and the career of its author, its legendary author, Ursula K. Le Guin. So before we get into all of that, let's take a quick break. Let's prepare ourselves to dive into this story. We'll be back in just a minute, folks.
All right, welcome back, listeners. Let's begin, as always, with a brief summary, starting with Chapter 1. This is obviously an incredibly dense book, so we're going to do our best to hit the broad beats of these first 7 chapters without getting too bogged down. But again, dense
No
story,
promises.
and we'll be
No
covering
promises.
it. No promises. All right, beginning with Chapter 1. In our opening chapter, we're thrust right into the story with basically no hand-holding. Hopefully you're ready to lock in, because words like chemering are going to get thrown around willy-nilly.
For real.
It's incredible. We're introduced to one of our main characters, Guin I, who is an envoy from the interstellar collective known as the Ecumen. He's been living on the frigid planet Gethin, also known as Winter, for 2 years, trying, so far unsuccessfully, to convince its nations to join the Ecumen. He attends a parade in the city of Erenrong, and he's making small talk with the other main character of this book, the Prime Minister of Karide, Estravan. He ends up later having dinner with Estravan and is shocked by the Prime Minister withdrawing his support for the Ecumen mission.
The betrayal.
The betrayal! Guin is blindsided and confused by all of the cultural and political subtext that he is clearly missing.
Yeah, so am I. Guin, I'm right there with you, bud. All right, in Chapter 2, we actually completely switch gears. So most of this book has these short chapters intercut in between the actual plot and the main story that are typically Githenian folktales from
That's
this
right.
culture. And this first one here in chapter 2 tells the story of two brothers from the Shoth community who have taken vows of chemering. And to be clear about what chemering is, it's a deep romantic partnership that two people voluntarily get into with each other. Now, when one of these brothers has a child, Githenian law dictates that incestuous relationships, for example, between these two brothers, cannot continue after a child is born. So they have to break it off at this point legally. Neither of them wants to. They're both heartbroken. And tragically, in his sadness, the childbearing brother dies by suicide. The other brother, who, who is very confusingly named Getharin, which just in my brain sounds like Gethin, which is the fucking planet we're on. The Getharin, our guy Getharin, who's clearly heartbroken, just lost the love of his life, lost the parent to his child, and has broken the law, frankly, by staying in a relationship with his brother. He gets exiled, and in his exile attempts to make this perilous crossing across the pairing ice. He doesn't make it very far, and lying on the ice near death, he has this vision of a ghostly image of his brother on the ice, and his brother sort of like invites him to come with to this like white city, and he's terrified. He's like, I don't want to go there. You can't even say my name. Are you even my brother? It's kind of it's a scary image. And he flees. He runs back to civilization instead of trying to cross the ice, and somehow survives this whole ordeal. Years later, as an old man, Getharin reclaims his name. He had changed his name at this point. He reclaims his name. He confesses his story, and thus lifts a curse that had fallen upon his home community of Shoth ever since the brothers had committed that sin and he had been in exile.
Moving on to chapter 3, we find Genli heading to the palace for his long scheduled meeting with King Argivan. King Argivan is paranoid, and in the lobby, to say the least, and in the lobby, Genli ends up hearing some pretty tragic news on the radio. Estervan, former prime minister, has been stripped of his ministership, branded a traitor for supporting the Ecumen cause, and exiled.
Holy shit.
This is mere moments before Genli is to walk into the meeting with King Argivan.
Oh my goodness. What's especially funny, what I found funny on a reread here, is just how good Genli's feeling coming into the meeting, right? He's got a new fit, he buys a new jacket or whatever, and he's like, I got this.
100%.
He comes in so hot, and then his bubble is just burst.
Immediately. Yeah, it's funny. As he enters into the chamber, the book mentions that his shoes are squeaking across the floor.
Yeah. The audiobook of that is so funny.
Yes, totally.
It goes on for so long.
Eek. Totally. It's so good.
It's so good.
Obviously, he is incredibly stressed as he enters the chamber for the chat. Yeah. And to summarize what is a pretty long meeting, Genli basically fails to convince this incredibly paranoid king that joining the Ecumen is in everyone's best interest, and he ends up leaving the palace dejected.
A rough meeting. We've all had meetings like that, I'm sure. Okay, chapter 4. Like we said earlier, we get folktales intercut between the story. This is yet again another folktale. This one tells the tragedy of fortune-telling. So, as the story goes, Lord Baristy once asked the foretellers of Handara when he would die, and he gets a vague response. He's told that you'll die on the 19th day. Period. No more. That's it. That's where the sentence stops.
Classic.
And of course, he's got follow-ups. He's like, what do you mean 19th day? Which month? Yeah. What year? When? It's like trying to ask Siri for something and totally. You just get the most useless response back.
100%.
Baristy's Very devoted, I will say. Much love to Herber here. Beristy's devoted chemering
R.I.P.
partner, Herber,
Herber.
goes to the foretellers and asks for clarification. He's like, look, Beristy's a mess because of what you guys told him. Please, can we get more information? I need more details. And the foretellers tell Herber that Beresty will live longer than you.
Right.
Period. End of sentence. No more details. That's it.
Oh my god. Hoodwinked yet again.
Oh my goodness. So Herber goes back. He tries to tell Beresty the news. He's like, look, I went for clarification. They told me you'll live longer than me. And Lord Beresty flies into a rage. He's like, what a dumb question for you to ask them. This is your fault. You're an idiot. And in his rage, kills his lover, kills his chemering partner. And this causes him to fall deeper into his insanity. And we're told in the story that he dies soon thereafter, as foretold, on the 19th day of the month.
Oof. The dangers of knowing the future.
The dangers indeed.
Well, moving on to chapter 5. With his mission at court in complete shambles, Genli decides to do some traveling around the country and ends up in the Hundara fastness with the sassy foretellers we just heard about in the folktale. Sassy is correct. Genli decides to ask the foretellers a question that's been burning him.
Yeah.
Will Gethin join the Ecumen in the next 5 years?
Ooh.
And after a pretty bizarre ceremony.
Yeah. A weird
pretty
ceremony.
sexually charged ceremony.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
They say yes. Or the answer, the hunch that is revealed is yes, indeed.
I mean, that's a clearer answer than we've gotten from the foretellers so far.
That's true. While this reassures Genli, it, of course, doesn't change the current situation.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole point.
Yes.
The head foreteller, Faxa, explains the purpose of the foretelling is not to answer the asker's question, but to exhibit the perfect uselessness of knowing the answer. End quote.
Love that. And that is pretty core, we'll come to learn in the book. Pretty core to the Hendara way of living, this cultural subgroup that exists on Gethin.
Yeah, and their philosophy.
And also to the foretellers. The whole purpose of the foretellers is to reinforce and teach this lesson to the Gethenian people that it's useless to know the answers to some questions.
Yeah.
Don't seek out those answers.
That's right. They, in fact, cultivate ignorance.
Yeah. So fascinating. A culture that cultivates ignorance in that way.
Yeah.
Okay, chapter 6. This is an interesting chapter because we suddenly, out of nowhere, this caught me off guard, we switch our perspective to Estraven.
Right.
And this chapter's like all action. We follow his daring escape from Karhide as he crosses the border into the neighboring country of Orgarain, which is the rival country to Karhide. The escape is honestly like some sort of spy thriller movie. He barely makes it across. There's agents
sonic attacks
following him. There's attack. There's like guns going off. Yeah. He ends up in a boat. He gets rescued. It's a whole thing.
All right.
Ultimately, Estraven ends up in the city of Mishnori in the country of Orgarain, and he needs time to recuperate. He ends up in a hospital. He has to rest up from his travels, and then after that, he is a refugee. He's a political refugee. He spends a few months doing just like manual labor work, like working in ice houses and stuff, trying to get back on his feet. Eventually, he makes contact with two sympathetic Orgoda politicians, the subtle Commensal Yagay and the blunt and shrewd Obssa. Obsa? The names, folks, let's just apologize in advance. We're going to be fucking up these names left and right
100%.
for our entire coverage of this book. So anyway, Yagay and Obsa. Estraven pitches to these two politicians who are pretty high up in Orgarain society. He pitches to them basically the importance of the Ecumen mission, because he knows from his previous conversations with Genli that he's had in the past couple of years that Genli's eventual plan is to also visit Orgarain. He's not going to
That's
stay
right.
in Karhide forever. He's got to convince the Orgarain people to join the Ecumen as well. So Estraven is here kind of planting those seeds early.
Moving on to chapter 7. This chapter isn't a folktale, but in fact, the very detailed field notes of
Yep, say the name.
Ongtat
Say it.
Opong. So many proper nouns we're going to be butchering. Anyways, one of the investigators who came to Gethin before Genli. The report lays out the specifics of the Gethenian sexual cycle, how they are sexually latent for a majority of the time, but once a month for about a week are sexually activated in this state called Kemer. The parallels to the menstrual cycle, pretty obvious here.
Yep.
And crucially, a person cannot choose to be male or female when in Kemer. The role is determined quite dynamically in physical contact with a partner. It varies from cycle to cycle, and anyone can bear children.
Wow.
Obviously, the social consequences of this are staggering.
Ugh, truly.
There is no permanent gender hierarchy. There is no other sex or the lesser sex.
Imagine.
They are all ambisexual.
Wow.
Potentially related, the investigator also notes that the Gethenians have no institution for war or large-scale conflicts. Perhaps their sexuality, perhaps their climate, perhaps their population density has prevented the formation of armies.
So fascinating.
Yes.
Okay, well, clearly we can't help ourselves. We're already talking about our feelings and our thoughts on the story. Those are the first 7 chapters and our summaries of them, folks. Let's officially get into it. Obssa, what are you thinking so far about the book now that we're 7 chapters in?
Oh my God, I have so much
It's
to
truly,
say.
yeah. What aren't I thinking about the book?
I will be in real time trying to condense my thoughts because honestly, there's so much to kind of unpack here. First of all, obviously, I've been meaning to pick up, one of Ursula K. Guin's books for forever. I've read a couple of her short stories, and I'm just so happy that we finally had a chance to cover this one.
Yeah.
For this episode and for this season. I am just genuinely so happy with the book and kind of the departure from other things I've recently read. This is just so rich. The character portraits so detailed. The texture of the world is absolutely remarkable. I mean, the characters, even the minor ones, have this weight and specificity that you don't always get, and it's just so rewarding to be going through these chapters for this episode. Le Guin, clearly a very keen observer of people, of human nature, its foibles, and you can just kind of feel that in the way she builds Gethin, right? It's not built like from the outside in, it's built from the inside out, right? It feels inhabited, so yeah, I'm just tremendously enjoying that aspect of it. And that said, like, I want to be careful here because I don't think this is a criticism so much as an observation. But I will note, I don't love Genli. I don't love him as our narrator. I don't love him as a character.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating because obviously the majority of this chunk of chapters is told from his perspective.
Yes.
Like, he is our narrator. But I just kind of find him to be slightly buffoonish, honestly.
Absolutely.
I don't know how much you agree with that. Like, does he not strike you as a little like, this is our emissary from the interplanetary consortium? Right. That shocks me,
It shocks me too. The feeling that I get reading Genli's reactions to things is that he is young. I don't know if you get that vibe. He seems like sort of young and inexperienced.
Yes. Amateur.
That's a great word. Yeah. Like, it doesn't feel like this is who you send on a critical mission to make first contact with a new culture, right? He seems kind of like what the fuck am I doing here? Like flying by the seat of my pants. Like, was he
Totally.
prepared at all for this meeting with the king? He like kind of made a bad
Yes.
pitch to the king and like
Totally.
didn't read the room correctly.
Right. Right.
And so I think I agree with you that Genli is sort of a frustrating character to live with because he's so confused and acting so
Right.
weird and somewhat like immature about everything. Like the
Right.
way he like sort of stomps out on Estraven when Estraven quote unquote
Yes.
betrays him is like,
Right. Right.
bro, what? Estraven doesn't owe you anything. Do you know anything about
Totally.
politics?
Totally. Exactly.
And
His
so,
lack of like diplomatic fluency there is like
yeah,
puzzling to me.
yeah,
Like he is the single representative of the
right.
ecumen. So you did kind of expect, like, it doesn't
You would
feel like he's
expect him
done
to be
his
a bit more
homework,
suave.
Totally.
Yeah, like he'd
Totally.
be more like George Clooney suave and not just
Right.
like
Right.
bumbling around.
Right.
But he isn't. And here's what I'll say. I think there's instances where a main character can be unintentionally annoying, and
Yeah.
like you can, and like the author wants you to like this main character, but you don't for one reason or another.
Right.
I think
Right.
we've both experienced that in books we've covered on
Totally.
the show and in books we've
Yeah.
just like read in life. I think this is an instance where Le Guin knows that Genli's a little bit annoying
Totally.
and like
100%.
intentionally writes him to be kind of
Yes.
buffoonish,
Yes.
and that we are supposed to actually be having thoughts about Genli,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he is literally a fish out of water. He
Yeah.
does not belong in this culture, and he's confused.
Yeah.
And we, the reader, are supposed to be like confused along with him.
Fair.
And I think there's sort of a meta nature to his character that Le Guin is very intentionally writing in that way.
Yes.
So
Agree.
I feel exactly the same way you do about Genli, but I'm a bit more forgiving because
Yeah.
I think it's very much intentional on Le Guin's part. She very
Yeah.
much wants us to be like, who is this guy? Should we have sent
No,
someone
totally.
more prepared?
Totally. No, I totally agree. And I think like him as a character and, kind of that choice of his depiction, it definitely also, perhaps reveals some of the limitations of the ecumen, the supposedly
Right.
advanced
We know
collective
nothing
of,
about them, so the Ecumen is clearly not some like holier than now we figured it out
yes,
alliance of planets. They come
totally.
with their own
Uh,
baggage.
exactly. So, I mean, all to say anyways, I mean, really, there's so many there's so many things we could
So
kind of
much. Yeah.
explore and unpack here. But I mean, I'll stop there. What are
Okay.
your
Oh yeah, I
first
see you have
impressions
like
as you're
3
going
more
through?
pages of notes
Yeah.
here. What's going on?
I will be coming back to those. I'm trying my best to
Sure. Yeah,
condense
yeah.
what it was quite a lot of thoughts about. We could talk about
Yeah.
the framing device of the story. We could talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really so much.
Yeah.
We
Your
could
Claude
expand
agent
on.
on the side is frantically trying to condense down your
Yeah,
script into
exactly.
bullet points.
Exactly.
Well, I will say, Upset, I completely agree with your adoration of this book. I feel
Yeah.
so much the same. I find myself 7 chapters into this book incredibly confused about what's going on and also loving every word of it.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
love this book so far.
Yes.
This book, in fact, is, to put it bluntly, extremely my shit. Like it is deeply political. It is
Yes.
weird. It is
Yeah.
full of dense world building. You put it so beautifully, world building that
Totally.
feels like it was written from the inside out and not from the
Right.
outside in.
Yeah.
It's just like overflowing with social commentary. I found myself
Yes.
highlighting passages all over the
Oh,
place in this book.
whole pages. There are whole pages
Yeah,
that are just yellow for
truly.
me.
Truly. So I mean, this book could not be more my shit. I'm loving every second of my experience with this story so far. Beyond being completely sold on the premise of the story so far,
Yeah.
I'm just so in love with Le Guin's prose.
Yes.
She is such
100%.
an elegant and skilled writer. It's
Oh,
astounding.
completely. Yes.
The words just leap off the page in a way that, like, I can't remember the last book where I felt this, honestly.
Yeah.
What I find so interesting is like, and you know this, our listeners know this, but like your basic writing 101 principles teach us that good writing breaks up the sentence structure, right? Long
Right.
sentence, short sentence, medium sentence, long sentence, medium sentence, short sentence. You keep things interesting by mixing up your sentence structures. And Le Guin is like, nah, fuck that. Here's a whole sentence that's an entire paragraph that goes on for the whole page.
Yes. Yes. Once you've mastered the conventions, you just break them. Totally.
It's crazy. And you're like, this
Yeah.
shouldn't work. Why is this one sentence going on for the whole page? And
Yes.
it does. That's the magic, is the flow of her words, the way she weaves the ideas together. It all just somehow works. There's like a rhythm and cadence and poetry to it that like Le Guin has clearly unlocked in the English language that the rest of us haven't. To where she doesn't need your fucking writing conventions and rules anymore. She writes, and she writes well. And honestly, in 2026, here's maybe the best praise I can give Le Guin's writing. You could never, in a million years, mistake this for AI writing. Something about the way Le Guin writes is just so human.
Yeah,
I can't put I'm not a good enough writer to even be able to articulate what it is. She's doing something here that is just so deeply human in the words.
Yes.
And I love it. I just love it so much.
It's also, I mean, your point about the prose being just so effortlessly delightful and engaging and wonderful. I mean, I also find the same to be true of kind of the philosophical ideas here, where it really feels like there's a lot that's being played with, but it finds its kind of way into some pretty interesting prose and little moments in the book. There's one that comes to mind here. That's towards the end of chapter 5. It's a statement from Faxa, the kind of head foreteller. And it's, right at the end of chapter 5. And they say the quote, the unforetold, the unproven, that is what life is based on. Ignorance is the ground of thought. Unproof is the ground of action. If it were proven that there is no God, then there would be no religion, no Handara, no Yomesh, no hearth gods, nothing. But also, if it were proven that there is a God, there would be no religion.
Oh my God.
It's so philosophically intriguing, but it's just this 2 sentences at the end of each chapter. And like, it's remarkable, honestly.
That these thoughts from Faxa about religion, I've honestly not stopped thinking about.
Yeah.
The fact that like, gosh, that's a whole other episode. Like we could spend an hour just talking about that one philosophical idea. About proving and disproving God, and the real freedom, the real way to break the cycle and break the chains of God, religion, or even not God, not religion, is to stop caring, to stop asking that question, to cultivate ignorance, to be like, who cares?
Yeah.
That is the ultimate victory.
Right.
For the
Handara. The
Handara.
answer to the wrong question, is just as bad as
why are you seeking an answer at all to the God question? Just say it doesn't matter, and you've broken the shackles and you're freed from it. What an incredible philosophical idea. And the fact that like trying to prove and disprove maintains the thing. Ultimately, the end result is the same. The thing still exists. The way you... Anyway, gosh, like it's so good. I'm so glad you shared that quote.
And incredibly fascinating. And I think I'll conclude my like kind of thoughts here with what feels like some interesting foreshadowing. And I'm curious about what this portends for the rest of the story. And it is in that kind of Faxa chapter with the foretellers. We get this kind of paradoxical statement from Faxa that seems to suggest that either we're asking the wrong question about Gethin's future, or that knowing the answer is somehow besides the point. And I'm just very, very curious about that, because we supposedly know that within 5 years, Gethin will be joining the Ecumen. But yet there's a question mark there. And I'm just burning with curiosity about this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, well, we could, I'm sure, gush about this story and only the first 7 chapters for another 45 minutes.
True.
But I think it's pretty clear that we both are really enjoying ourselves and are quite invested in the story and can't wait to keep going. Let's take a quick break. Folks, when we come back, we're going to get into our sci-fi analysis. We're going to take a look at the history of this book's publication and take a look at Ursula K. Le Guin's amazing life and career. So stick around for that. We'll see you in a minute.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Welcome back, listeners. As always, let us dive into the meta of this book. Abu, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, let's start by talking about Ursula K. Le Guin herself. Ursula Kroeber, as she was born in October of 1929 in Berkeley, California, into one of, I will say, the most intellectually, let's say, remarkable households in American academic life. Her father, for example, is Alfred Lewis Kroeber, who was the founder of the University of California's entire anthropology department. What the fuck?
Okay. All right. That explains quite a lot.
That explains a lot. That suddenly
Yeah.
makes a lot of lights turn on about this book. Her mother is Theodora Krakaw Kroeber, who would go on later in life to become a successful author. She, in fact, wrote Ishi in Two Worlds in 1961, which is a book that became a landmark of American nonfiction. So, two very successful, well-educated, well-read parents who lived very successful lives and had very successful careers.
And yet another remarkable fun fact about her is her parents were close friends with none other than Robert Oppenheimer of the Manhattan Project, who would go on to end up being a inspiration for one of the characters in The Dispossessed.
Oh, no way.
I'll just say, clearly surrounded by intellectuals, luminaries that shaped her ideas and visions around science fiction and cultural and anthropological kind of the underpinnings of those in her works.
Definitely. And it's clearly coming through in this story, and it comes through in a lot of her works, for sure. Continuing with her childhood a little bit here, Ursula grew up in a household surrounded by books, naturally. She and her three older brothers loved reading, and she in particular took an interest in sci-fi magazines and mythology.
Right.
She, in fact, wrote her first short story at age 9 and submitted a story to Astounding Science Fiction, a sci-fi magazine at the time, when she was just 11 years old.
Yeah.
That story got rejected, was never published, and she, in fact, wouldn't submit another story to a sci-fi magazine for another decade.
Le Guin ended up attending Radcliffe College, that's the women's coordinate college of Harvard, and graduated in 1951 with a degree in Renaissance French and Italian literature, and then ended up earning a master's in French from Columbia University in 1952. Le Guin, being the brilliant person that she clearly was awarded a Fulbright Fellowship to study in France. And big surprise there. And it was on the ship to France in 1953 that she ended up meeting her future husband, Charles Alfred Le Guin, a historian. They ended up marrying in Paris that same year.
Wow.
The couple later eventually settled in Portland, Oregon, where they raised 3 children. Le Guin balancing domestic life with her writing, and ended up spending about a decade from 51 to 61 with little success. Every novel she wrote was rejected by publishers.
Ugh.
The fools. The fools.
Truly the fools.
She did end up deciding to switch tactics and focus on sci-fi. And finally, in 1962, her short story April in Paris was published in Fantastic Science Fiction.
Hey.
She wouldn't get a novel published until Ace Books released Rocannon's World in 1966.
Nice. Okay. So finally, by 1966, she is a published author with a published novel. Right. Most of these early stories and novels that Le Guin published were ignored by critics. That was until she published 2 books that finally put her on the map. The first, 1968's A Wizard of Earthsea, and the second, folks, say it with me, 1969's The Left Hand of Darkness, the very book we're covering on this show. Now, The Left Hand of Darkness stunned science fiction critics, and in fact won Le Guin both the Nebula and the Hugo for Best Novel that year, making her the first woman to win both of these awards.
Wow.
That's amazing. What an achievement.
Well deserved.
The novel's treatment of gender was radical for 1969. I'd say it's pretty radical even today, all these years later.
Yeah.
And what makes it especially powerful is that Le Guin wasn't writing about the political and sexual lives of this genderless society just to be quirky or titillating. You know, she wasn't like, look at this weird thing I've come up with in my weird sci-fi story.
Yeah.
She's legitimately using the world building and storytelling that she crafts in the story to ask profound questions. Questions like, if you remove gender from a society, what happens?
Yeah.
What a question. What a question in particular to ask in 1969.
Yeah.
She spent a very long career writing and exploring her political and feminist and philosophical beliefs, many of which are clearly present in the story that we're reading.
That's right. Le Guin's legacy and impact on the genre simply cannot be overstated. Her work helped elevate the genre from its adventure pulp origins into serious critical literature that could tackle the biggest issues of humanity. I actually had a friend tell me that Left Hand was the book that allowed him to kind of come out of the closet as a sci-fi lover because of just its depth and the kind of degree with which it covers really the fundamental questions of what it means to be human, you know?
Yeah.
Her body of work demonstrates that sci-fi and fantasy could be as morally serious, as psychologically penetrating, and as artistically accomplished as any other genre.
Amen to that.
And her treatment, facts. Le Guin died in January 2018 after a legendary 60-year career, and we are all lucky to exist in a world shaped by her stories.
Truly. What an impact this woman had on a genre that you and I love so much, a genre that we spend hours on this show celebrating.
That's right.
And much of what we celebrate is thanks to the ground that Le Guin broke in her stories. I think like even to this day, sci-fi is so popular now, but even to this day, I think there are folks who will go, oh, it's just the alien zap zap genre.
Right.
And like that's maybe how sci-fi started. Maybe it was alien zap zap. But it is so much more than that now. And it took writers like Le Guin, it took writers like Frank Herbert, like Asimov, like all of the legends to prove that sci-fi could tackle some of the most difficult questions of our time.
Totally.
And questions that will continue to be relevant for decades to come. And I think Left Hand of Darkness proves that.
Definitely. Yeah. And this is also already a book that I see myself reading again and again and again, honestly.
Yeah.
There's so many just little crevices and nooks that I want to kind of really sit with, and
absolutely.
It's not, it's kind of rare that you have that experience with the book, and I'm certainly having it now.
Yeah. And I'm glad to be sharing it with you. Okay, folks, that's the meta on this book, a bit of history on Le Guin's career and how this book was published and received and its legacy. We have an assignment for you. There's more book to read. Aren't we all so lucky? For the next book club episode, we will be continuing our coverage of The Left Hand of Darkness, so make sure that you have read the next set of assigned chapters. That's chapters 8 through 15 of this book. And if you're wondering, hey, how do I find out which chapters are assigned and when they're due? I want to read ahead. Not to worry. Check out the links in the show notes below. That's where you can find the link to our entire season 3 reading schedule, that has all of the books we'll be covering this season, what the chapter breakdowns are, when the due dates are, so that you can stay on top of things and get that Holden at the library in time to read along with us.
Oh, if you have not gotten your Holden at the library, you do have no chance of catching up on this book. This book is
Yeah, it's too late for you now.
always
But
like
I'm talking
50
like...
people. Good luck.
Yeah, Godspeed.
Well, friends, the only thing that makes this podcast possible is permanent, intolerable uncertainty. And also your 5-star reviews.
Yeah, those are important.
So please do your part and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also, of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, Science Fiction Book Club is not a podcast, but a family quarrel.
It's true. We're fighting. We're always fighting.
That's what all this laughter is. It's actually an
It's just
expression
to
of
mask
rage where
the
we
anger.
come from. That's right.